Man, I really wonder how many takes I will have to go through until this finally happens. Okay, let's just try it once again. Welcome to my comparison of the Nexus 5X against the Samsung Galaxy S7. And before you ask yourself, why would you compare these two phones with each other? Because after all, the price difference is huge, and let's be honest, a Nexus user wouldn't really consider to buy a Samsung phone and vice versa. But in the end, I think both deliver a great overall experience, and I think it's definitely worth taking a look at what happens if we throw them at each other. And one wish before I'm going to start the comparison: if you think I'm biased towards one or the other phone, at least in the comments let me know which one that should be, because sometimes I have a hard time telling myself. So let's start off with the design and build quality. 5.2 inches on the Nexus, 5.1 inches on the Samsung Galaxy S7, but in terms of size there's quite a noticeable difference, because the Nexus is quite a lot wider, taller. In terms of thickness there's not that much of a difference, but after all the Samsung Galaxy S7 feels a lot more compact in the hand. It is also built a little bit more premium, feels just nicer to the hand, way smoother overall, rounder, a little bit more organic and comfortable. But this doesn't say the Nexus feels bad, because I got the white version this time, which feels a little bit smoother to the touch, which I definitely prefer. It is a little bit more edgy than I would like to see, and the power button placement is not my preference, because quite noticeably higher than on the Samsung Galaxy S7, but for its price it really feels still quite good. I don't really have any issues. It doesn't feel cheap at all, it doesn't really creak, and it feels quite substantial, so definitely not bad. What you prefer, after all, in the end, that's a personal preference. I would go for the Samsung Galaxy S7, but it also costs like twice the time or twice the money. And the fingerprint reader could be even a deciding factor for you, because I'm actually not even a big fan of both. Because what I don't like so much on the S7 is that I have to wait once it goes to the lock screen and then to the home screen. As you can see, there is a little bit of a delay. The one on the Nexus works a little bit more reliable, also okay in terms of speed, but I don't like the position so much. That is personal preference, so either of them isn't the really best one. I had quite a few misfires on both, so both are not 100% reliable for me, but in the end, both do a great job, both for the price accordingly do quite fine. Now let's check the display, because we have a QHD 5.1 inch display on the Galaxy and a Full HD display on the Nexus. Let's check those. It's always a little bit harder with just one device. As you can see, we have a little bit of flickering on the Galaxy, but that is due to the camera, nothing I can do. In terms of white point, I think actually the Nexus makes a better appearance. It is supposed to be a little bit warmer, and with the newest update there is a setting where you can make colors colder, but on my unit they are already perfect. On the first review unit that I had, then it was noticeably warmer, and then it could have made some advantage of that, but as it is, it's nice. The Galaxy S7 here looks a little bit colder, but I also like that one in terms of white, so no problems here. It's a little bit of personal preference. Blacks, of course, here the Nexus loses because we have AMOLED, and that just has the better blacks along with the better contrast ratio. So you can see everything just pops a little more, looks a little bit more 3D, just is a little bit more vibrant. After all, it's the more impressive display. This one maybe could be a little bit more accurate, but in the end I also think it is a little bit more washed out, just a little bit, not too much. In terms of maximum brightness, both are great, but the Samsung Galaxy S7 after all is noticeably brighter, but it doesn't make enough of a difference to be a deciding factor. So I like both displays, but this one definitely is highest flagship level, where this one is on a very, very high level after all, but not on the same level. In terms of sound, now let's check that one in a side-by-side comparison, both at full loudness. Let's start with the Nexus. Sounds okay, but now let's see about the Samsung. I think the difference is obvious. Okay, so both don't have the best speakers, so let's not fool anyone here. It's not front-facing stereo speakers like on the Nexus 6P, but the Nexus 5X still could have done a better job, because I would have at least wished it to be 10% louder and to be more of a richer sound, because it's a little bit more flat and shallow. The one on the Samsung Galaxy S7 though, at least besides it not that great position, sounds really good because the maximum volume is noticeably louder than on the Nexus and it sounds quite rich. So something that I definitely like, and I prefer this sound even though the position isn't maybe the best one, and during game you can block it, which didn't happen on the Nexus, but after all the sound experience is a lot better on the S7. So yeah, that's just my opinion. Now let's see what we've got in terms of performance. Let's check the browser here. Okay, now about the scrolling, I have to say the biggest difference is actually the way they scroll and not just the smoothness after all, because as you can see here, the Samsung Galaxy S7 feels super nice and super smooth and it's kind of like butter. But as you can see here, the Nexus scrolls really smooth as well. It just scrolls a little bit different. There is a little bit of a delay for some reason if I stop the scrolling, which I don't have on the Galaxy S7, but yeah, I'm not quite sure why that happens. In usual normal use that doesn't happen, and as you will see here, it's the same thing. Scrolling is just a little bit different. They both use a different friction and all that. Both are really doing a great job. I actually think after the update that I got on the Nexus, it is more consistent, because I still definitely see a few rare instances of lag on the Samsung. I think due to the AMOLED display, the scrolling itself feels a little bit smoother and it just feels a little bit different on the Nexus. But after all, I would say both are absolutely great performance here. As you can see, super nice and smooth here as well. Both responsive to the touch, so all good here. The precision towards the sides is definitely better on the Nexus, because I had, if you checked one of my videos and I talked about those gestures, the Samsung, once you can, let's say, increase the bezel hotspot, it works out quite nice, but I didn't have to do that on the Nexus in the first place. As you can see here, Google Plus works absolutely nice. As you can see here, really nice and smooth, almost no lag, and still really nice on the Samsung Galaxy S7. So in the end, after the update, the Nexus 7 got a lot more responsive. It doesn't really have those odd delays that it had. In terms of RAM management, after all, we have 4 GB on the Samsung, and even though it doesn't have the best management, it is a little bit better than the just 2 GB. But in normal use, both do a totally fine job, and I had no issues at all with that. In terms of gaming performance, the S7 wins, but actually not by that much. Both are great performance in terms of games. But in the end, if I would have to choose one or the other, for sheer performance, I would go for the S7, because when it is smooth, it looks a little bit smoother due maybe to the display, and overall a little bit better. But the actually now more consistent performer is the Nexus. But it's actually hard to choose. If you prefer maybe one or the other scrolling style that I showed off, it could be actually enough of a deciding factor. I like the way more slippery scrolling of the S7, but I absolutely love this one as well, and I would be fine with each one's performance. Both great performers, and it's really hard to choose. In terms of app loading times though, there the S7 is noticeably faster. I could try to show this off. Let me actually do this. Kill all the apps that I have here. Do the same here. And now let's launch a few apps to see what happens. As you can see, it was faster. Once again, it is faster. It's not by much, but after all, you do notice a little bit of a difference. The S7 just feels a little bit more snappy. Now, about the battery life. It charges in 1 hour and 35. I think pretty much the same on the Nexus, so both charge very quickly. In terms of battery life though, from what I see so far on the Samsung Galaxy S7, I get about solid 30 minutes more of screen on time, because I get around close to 4 hours on the Nexus and 4.5, maybe a little bit more on the Samsung Galaxy S7. So there's not a huge difference. Both are decent, both are slightly better than they should be, or than they have to be, but I don't think it's enough to make the deciding factor here. Now in terms of software, I don't even want to judge, because this is way too hard. We have minimal bare bones vanilla Android with the newest and bestest updates. Also, N will come a lot earlier. And on the 7 we have TouchWiz. A lot of people still have an issue with TouchWiz lag and all that. And yes, sometimes I see some rare instances of that. But in the overall daily use, it's nothing that I really bothered about, and I'm fine with that. But it's really hard for me. If I would have to choose, if I would be an average consumer, if I wouldn't root my device, then I would go for the just stock more capable software on TouchWiz because I have dual screen or dual window, I have pop-up window, some things that I actually use. I have the clipboard for pasting and copying stuff. I have a lot more smaller options that in the end really enhance the experience after all. Of course, I would like to get all the bloat gone, which I had to, but that's manually an odd thing. But if it's a personal decision for me, I would go for the Nexus in terms of software if I would root my phone and then use custom ROMs, because then the Nexus is unmatched. So for some people, the software could be the deciding factor. For example, on the Nexus, if I would use it, I would definitely have to root it, definitely have to use custom ROMs to have the best experience. But on the Samsung Galaxy S7 for right now, I don't even feel the need for it. I will use it like it is stock because it already does all I want to. Of course, I'm missing out on a few great custom ROM features, but it's not enough to really want me root and custom ROM at the moment. So that's really a hard decision. And I'm pretty sure a Nexus user would say, wow, TouchWiz, no way in hell. And someone who really likes TouchWiz would say, stock is too bare bones. So please don't count me on that. Don't corner me here. I like them both for what they are. Now in terms of camera, and I will post a few direct comparison shots after or at the end of the video because I don't want to do this right now here, but just real quick. If you want a great selfie cam, the Nexus wins hands down because I think the selfie cam on my Galaxy S7 is trash. It is very, very blurry, and you will see this in the direct comparisons. Even with some lower end phones that I compared with, this one just isn't smooth for some reason. And I did turn off all the beautify modes and all that. I just don't get sharp pictures. But once we go to the main camera, things are a little bit different. In low light, I think still the S7 does a way better job, even though if I use HDR Plus on the Nexus, it delivers great low light shots as well, but not on the very bright, detailed and sharp level that the S7 does. Once we go outdoors and have good lighting conditions for both, it's really hard to say because I felt the Nexus was more natural with more accurate colors. For me, in my experience, the S7 brightens the picture up way too loud. It makes it way too warm and way too nice appearing, just not natural and accurate, but great shots after all. So if you can get that, then maybe use the manual mode to get out of the way the odd white balance that makes everything seem way too yellowy. It is definitely a great shooter. If you want out of the box the better, more natural shots, the Nexus one is actually the one to go for. But I think if you watch these pics, especially on the phone, they look still very magnificent still. About the video camera qualities, both do a great job. I really love the camera of the Nexus 5X because it is super sharp with great autofocus, great transitions of brightness, and the Samsung is pretty much on the same level. Not really too big of a difference. You have to see the pictures after all and decide. So in the end, let's get quickly through them and then maybe I can help you decide, but I don't think I will matter here. Design and build quality for me, hands down, the S7 wins. It just feels so much nicer to the touch, but of course it is more expensive. In terms of display, if you don't like an AMOLED display, this one won't change your mind. It is slightly oversaturated still, and a little bit of a few other things are there, but I think the Nexus 5X display is a little bit washed out and just not as impressive, so I prefer the S7. In terms of sound as well, louder, richer, overall just better. Performance is neither here nor there. I would have actually expected a little bit more from the S7, considering that this one is last gen with the 808, but it performs so well, especially after the update. Everything is smooth, it is quite snappy, multitasking has improved, it is not delayed anymore, so it is a flagship performer now. The S7 feels a little bit more slippery smooth, if I could call it that, just a little bit nicer, maybe also due to the AMOLED display, just that makes scrolling appear a little bit nicer. Then the battery life, a slight win for the S7, not by that much, it wouldn't really break the bank after all, or break it and make it. Then software, like I told you, I'm not judging. And the camera, if I would have to choose one combination, so front and back camera, I would think I would go for the Nexus because I like the more natural colors. I really didn't have to do anything. I just pointed and shot. Pictures were great. Now, if I would do a lot more low light shots and maybe a few more video takes, then the S7. But if you do want selfies, then I don't think this one is the way to go for. So in the end, Like I already said in the beginning, if you are a Nexus user, the Samsung won't sway your way and otherwise. But of course, we have to consider one thing. This one here, I think you can get it for around 300, sometimes even below that in the US. And even here in Germany, it's at around 300 euros these days. Where this one, I got it for 560, but usually it's slightly at about above 600. So about twice the price. Is it twice as good? No, definitely not. It is most noticeably better in terms of the display and feel in hand, but other than that, the sound, yeah, noticeably, but not that much better. Performance, not really that it would make a difference here. Battery life as well, and cameras are amazing on both. Now, I think in the end it comes down to if you can stand or if you can get used to TouchWiz, or if you want the best custom ROM capabilities, want the best possible modder phone. If you are more of a stylish person, want more premium, want something that is nice to look at, that feels great, has overall absolutely great capabilities, then the S7 is the one to go for. But if you want a more streamlined, maybe sometimes a little bit more lighter feeling and not that touch-whizzy experience, the Nexus is still a great buy. And for $300 right now, I think it's pretty much the best that you can get. But if you go into the $600 spectrum, there is definitely more competition with the LG G5 coming soon. And if you want the more premium Nexus, there is still, after all, the Nexus 6P. And I will do a comparison with those two as well, just so you can see that. And that will level the playground a little bit more in terms of premium, feel, display and sound a lot. And then I'm not quite so sure about the S7 anymore. But once again, I'm finished. The video is quite long already. And now, let me just guess if you think I am biased. I think you would say I am biased towards, or I prefer the S7, maybe because it's my own phone. That's just my guess, but like I said, I tried to be very objective. I think I've considered everything quite objectively, and I definitely know to appreciate all the good things about the Nexus. I'm definitely not trashing it. It is the best $300 device that I see so far, because I think I said the Sony Xperia Z5 would be the best normal sized phone in that price range, but this one is now a lot cheaper, and that makes it a lot better in terms of value. So like I said, you pay half the price, but you are so much closer than half of the overall performance. I've covered it all. I hope, I really hope you didn't think I was biased, because I just don't like to be caught out biased, because I personally don't think I am. But either way, if you have any questions or something to say, leave that down in the comments. If you like this video, thumbs up maybe. And if you want to see more comparisons, reviews and content like this, subscribe to the channel. And I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.